It was terribly cold that November day. It didn't help that Sam was suffering from a bad cold. He was completely miserable. It was made worse by the fact that he had to work outside in the cold. Sure, he could have stayed home and called in sick like so many others, but that was never his way. It was his family's company, and he always gave his all in everything he did. One day he heard someone say, "If a thing is worth doing, it should be done 100%." He never called in sick unless he was physically unable to come. That only happened twice. Both times it was because he was hospitalized. After coming to terms with that, he went back to managing the team he was working with. At 10 o'clock, he felt his body start to give out. He realized he could no longer continue working. Arturo, his foreman, took one look at him and practically forced him into his truck. "Go home, Samuel. We don't need you right now, and the whole crew will end up sick." So 20 minutes later, Sam was in his truck parked on the street in front of his house. He parked on the street because when he came home, he found his brother's truck in his driveway. This was odd for 3 reasons. First, his brother was supposed to be at work. Second, Jimmy had no business being at Sam's house if Sam wasn't there. Third, the reason Sam was on the street with the crew at all was because he was covering for Jimmy, who was supposedly in a neighboring town meeting with a potential client. Of all the possible reasons Jimmy's truck could have been in his driveway at that time, Sam couldn't think of a single one that was acceptable. Camila's voice came through the open bedroom door. Thus, Sam's suspicions were confirmed. Sam, switching his phone to video mode, headed toward the open doorway. "Jimmy's making me cover his ass? Let's see how he likes it when I kick his ass." For perfect timing, Sam waited and threw a punch. Jimmy's universe changed in an instant. Camila looked back and was horrified to see the mask of rage on her husband's face. Sam managed to pull himself together and walked around the bed to see his older brother curled up on the floor in agony. He realized that any further retaliation at this point could land him in jail. Jimmy, for his part, was horrified. He realized that he didn't stand a chance against his younger brother. Even if everything was fair and square, Sam would tear him apart. He remembered Thanksgiving 2 years ago. Jimmy, being the older brother, had always been able to handle Sam. Unfortunately, Jimmy had gotten a little softer as he worked mostly at a desk. Sam, on the other hand, preferred to be out with the crews and help with construction. Thus, Sam gained a lot in strength, and Jimmy lost a little. Jimmy always liked to tease Sam, saying that being older, Jimmy could always handle his little brother. That day, Sam challenged his older brother to an arm wrestling challenge, right in front of Jimmy's wife. An arm wrestling challenge. Jimmy, thinking it was funny that Sam challenged his older brother, let his self-confidence lead him. "Okay, time to show my little brother again, who's boss in the house," smirked Jimmy, turning to his wife. Jimmy and Sam walked over to the table and sat down at the table. "Oh, shit," muttered Jimmy, hearing the GO. No matter how hard he tried, Jimmy couldn't move Sam out of his seat. Sam just sat there smirking. His biceps were bulging, but Jimmy knew Sam wasn't putting his best foot forward. He looked at Sam's face and saw that he was just playing with him. Jimmy saw that he was about to be thoroughly humiliated in front of his wife and the whole family. He saw in Sam's eyes all the humiliation and abuse he had inflicted on his little brother. He could see that Sam was enjoying this little revenge. Sam even went so far as to lower Jimmy's hand halfway down and check his watch before returning it to its neutral position. The humiliation was complete as Sam yawned with boredom and effortlessly took Jimmy's hand back to the table. Afterward, Jimmy vowed revenge. Really, Jimmy deserved what he got. He had treated his younger brother poorly all his life, but Jimmy was basically a bully. No misbehavior went unpunished. Jimmy was divorced before the next Thanksgiving. His wife hired a private investigator and caught Jimmy having an affair. 6 months later, Camila and Sam were married. Okay, I should probably tell you about my family. My father, Jacob, started his construction company when I was 3 years old. He set it up as a corporation, but all the stock was owned by family members. My mom, Evelyn, started working as an accountant. I had an older brother, Jimmy, whom I've already told you about, and a younger sister, Stephanie, or Steph as she preferred. For the most part, we were happy. My parents loved us, and we loved each other. Jimmy was kind of a bully and rarely took the opportunity to measure up to me as an older brother. Steph was the baby of the family. Not only was she the youngest, but she was also a girl. Of course, her parents spoiled her. To me, she was a bitch. So, my older brother was the heir, and my sister was the spoiled girl. I was the middle child. Of course, my parents loved me and I loved them. They didn't really have any favorites. At least I'm sure they didn't think they did. But my older brother was still the heir, and my younger sister was still the baby of the family. I was the middle child. In terms of kinship, my brother was the oldest and always made sure I knew it. My younger sister seemed to view me as nothing more than an inherited, useful servant. I'm sure my parents didn't realize what they were doing when they required me to give her rides after I got my driver's license. Never mind that I didn't get the same benefits when my older brother got his driver's license. So I realized that the above paragraph will seem like whining or self-pity. It isn't. These are simple facts. I knew who I was and what the situation was. Don't be mad at my parents, yet. It's just the way things are. Everyone has their place in the family. I was the middle child. And I understood that. My older brother would take over the business. That's just the way it was. My little sister was taken care of. That's the way it was done. I was the middle child. I would have to make my own way. And here I am, married for almost a year and a half now, and found my older, divorced, cheating brother entertaining my wife in my house, in my bed. No need to describe the details. Jimmy grabbed his clothes and ran out the door. It took Camila 20 minutes to pack her things, and she left too. I had owned the house before we met, so it wasn't part of any community property. We had a prenup, so I just signed a power of attorney with my attorney, laid out my terms to him, and left town. My attorney sent me a final divorce decree 6 months later. Okay. It sounds like everything went smoothly, but it didn't. Sure, I went out of town, but not very far. I went to talk to my parents. I showed them the evidence. They said I needed to get over it. Jimmy was going to take over the company, and I had to let him go for the sake of family harmony. My sister joined in too. Sure, Jimmy was an asshole, but it was just a minor nuisance amidst the common good. If I push him, I'll lose. Let it go and be happy for Jimmy and Camila. To make matters worse, Camila moved in with Jimmy that same night. I was told not to make waves. Jimmy was the chosen one. It was quite obvious that I was alone in my struggle. I vowed never to come back until I had my revenge. Look, in a few years, Jimmy will take over the company. Yes, we're disappointed in what he did, but we're not going to disown him. You've got a good case here. Get over it and get in line. Don't try to make us choose between you. He's the heir apparent. Deal with it, my parents told me. My sister, bitchy as ever, picked up on it. Oh, boo 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 boo. So what? She just decided to switch. I can't really blame her. Just pull yourself together and make sure I have the Ramsey report on my desk by Monday morning. When I finally talked to Camila, it only got worse. It started about a month after we got married, she admitted. She also said that most of the time I covered for Jimmy so he could come to her. Even worse, she told me she was pregnant and the baby was Jimmy's. I was an innocent victim, but my whole family sided with the cheaters. I watched as Jimmy and Camila were welcomed by my family with open arms. I watched as everyone pretended that I never had a relationship with my own wife. I listened to my family admire Camila and congratulate Jimmy on becoming a father and giving my parents a grandchild. All this while, I was quietly sidelined. My divorce was barely mentioned, only talked about in generalities when it came to the timing of Jimmy and Camila's marriage. I was invited to dinners and parties, but it was obvious that it was out of obligation rather than out of a desire to have me around. As long as I showed up for work and fulfilled my duties, that was all they cared about as far as I was concerned. The last time I saw my family for the next 10 years was exactly 3 minutes and 30 seconds. It was at Thanksgiving dinner. I arrived late in the evening, walked in, and began the greeting. Happy Thanksgiving, you incubator bitch whore, I exclaimed as I entered the dining room. And you, bastard! You look completely different. And just as quickly, I was shoved out the door. I swore two things. One, I would leave and never consider these people family again. Two, one day I would come back and destroy them for what they had done. This was my family. These people were supposed to love and respect me. I did everything I could to be a good son and brother to them, and they turned their backs on me when they should have hugged and comforted me. Anyway, I had to go back and burn their world around me. I would show them the same mercy they showed me. None. 2 weeks later. Damn it! Where the hell is Samuel? Came a shout from Jacob's office. What happened? Asked Evelyn worriedly, running into the study. True, she hadn't seen her middle child in a while, but she figured he was still sulking over what had happened. She felt a little sorry for him, but she just couldn't go against her eldest son. After all, he was the one who had been chosen to lead the company. Geraldson's project is a month behind, and the Mandelson building inspector is demanding that we redo everything that's been done in the last week and completely redo everything. It's going to cost us at least $50,000 and another 2 weeks to fix it. Why the hell did Samuel let this happen? Yelled Jacob. First of all, Stephanie stated as she entered the office, the Geraldson project belongs to Jimmy, not Sam, so I don't understand why you're blaming him for this. Second, I haven't seen or heard from Sam in the last 2 weeks. He's not answering his cell phone, and the station manager just told me he hasn't seen or heard from him in the last couple weeks either. Sam knows damn well he was supposed to have Jimmy's back on this project. Hell, he's been working on it for the last 6 months, so he should be used to it. Find him and tell him I'm waiting for him in my office so I can kick his ass first thing in the morning. It's high time he got over this whining and got with the program. The next morning, an excited Stephanie was in her father's office. She had sent over 20 text messages and left several voicemails on Sam's phone. She had even stopped by Sam's house to see if she could talk to him. Now she had to explain to her irritated father and the rest of the family what she had found. Where the hell is Samuel? I told you he was supposed to be here this morning, but I don't see him. Jacob frowned, looking around at his wife, oldest son Camel, and daughter. Well, he left, she stuttered. Gone? What do you mean gone? Her mother asked. I mean gone. I don't know where, but he's gone. He's not answering text messages or phone calls. He's not answering voicemails. I even went to his house yesterday and found that he had moved out. When I went in, there was a cleaning crew there, and they told me they were getting the house ready for the new tenants to move in. Apparently, he's renting it out now, she explained. You mean he abandoned his family? Jacob practically screamed. Stephanie had had a rather restless night after her discoveries. Not being able to sleep had forced her to go over in her head the many things that had happened and been said over the past few years. It became even harder to fall asleep as her brain began to move in a single logical direction. Every memory of how everyone had treated her brother replayed in vivid colors and surround sound. No, she said in a soft voice. I think he thinks his family abandoned him. 10 years later. After leaving home, I joined the Army Corps of Engineers. I went to college and worked part-time for the company until I graduated. My degree was in civil engineering, and I also earned an MBA. Of course, Jimmy was going to run the company, but I was also going to be part of the executive team. At least that was the plan. Now I started making other plans. My plans had changed from when I first left home. My new plans were even better, and they were going to come to fruition today. I grinned as I watched my little sister walk into the building across the street. She looked at me, but it was obvious she didn't recognize me. I had changed a lot in the last 10 years. I didn't have much time, so I thought back over the last few years. As I mentioned, I joined the military. With my education and experience, I was welcomed with open arms. I ended up in the sandbox rebuilding infrastructure. I had a lot of free time, and I used it to train, take weapons classes, and even had a couple of special forces guys teach me hand-to-hand combat. Not that I needed it, but I wanted to build up my strength and be able to defend myself if needed. I was 6 months away from the end of my tour of duty. By this point, I had been promoted to captain, and my commander was already thinking about re-enlisting. To be honest, I was thinking about it myself. We were moving the convoy to a new area when it happened. An IED went off as we drove by. Our Humvee was destroyed but survived most of the blast and shrapnel. It hit me, but I didn't think it was really serious. But it still hurt a lot. As I was trying to get out of the destroyed vehicle, gunfire could be heard all around. That's when I noticed that one of the MPs was very badly wounded. Her leg was badly wounded, and she was losing a lot of blood. I was just grabbing the first aid kit to start trying to slow the blood loss when someone yelled that the car was on fire. Stuffing the first aid kit in my hand, I unbuckled my seatbelt and pulled her out of the car and into cover. I managed to slow the bleeding while the gunfire raged around us. After doing what I could for her, I picked up my rifle and got into the fight, doing my best to keep the enemy out of our position. I paid no attention to how much blood I was losing, kneeling beside her and shooting at anyone who seemed to be trying to get to us. 20 minutes later, I was exhausted when I heard the clatter of helicopters overhead. My body finally gave up when I saw the paramedics running towards us. Son of a bitch! Immediately send these two of them to the evacuation vertilet. I heard one of them yell as everything around me went dark. My eyes opened to a pair of green puddles surrounded by the face of an angel with gorgeous red hair. "Oh, shit," muttered I. The angel's eyebrows drew together and her face frowned. "What's the matter?" she asked in a sweet, melodic voice. "I was sure I was going to survive, but apparently I died." "What makes you think you died?" "Well, I've never died before, so I can't be sure. But I think that if someone wakes up and sees an angel looking at them, it's a clear sign that they've died." Her face changed, and she started to laugh. "Sorry to disappoint you, but I'm far from an angel. In fact, I'm a lawyer." I smiled. "That means I ended up somewhere else, but I don't mind as long as I can keep seeing you here." "Well, if it's up to me, you'll see me often. Fortunately for both of us, it won't be in hell. You, my brave hero soldier, are still alive. You are now in a hospital in Germany. You were treated back at the base and then brought here." "Good. Since you said you're a lawyer and not a nurse, I'd like to know who you are and why you're here with me. Not that I'm complaining, but I'm not sure a lawsuit against the rebels for pain and suffering would really work." She laughed again. I really liked her laugh. "No, I'm not here to try to sue the rebels. I'm here to thank you for saving my sister's life. My name is Rebecca Caulfield. My sister June was the MP you pulled out of the Humvee and administered first aid. Everyone I've spoken to is adamant that if you hadn't done what you did, she would have died." "So how is she feeling? Is she going to be okay?" I asked. "She's going to be fine. She managed to save her leg, but she'll always limp at least a little bit." That's how I got to meet Becca and her sister. True to her word, Rebecca spent her days in Germany, dividing her time between my sister and me. I decided not to re-enlist and was discharged with a Purple Heart and Silver Star. Upon returning to the States, I continued to date Rebecca. We got along very well and started dating. I told her about my past and how my ex-wife and family had betrayed me. I told her about my revenge plan. Simply put, I would start my own construction company and compete with them. Being in the military, I never needed a lot of money. I invested what I could until I finally saved up enough to proceed with my plans. Being intimately familiar with my family's business, I knew all the ways to get around them and start stealing their customers and best employees. I might not be able to completely bankrupt them, but I could become more successful and reduce their income significantly. Rebecca thought for a moment, then smiled slyly. "How would you like to really burn them out?" Then she told me her plan. I liked it. I liked it a lot. As it turns out, Rebecca's parents are very rich. Very rich. They also really liked me, and they were very angry at my family for what they had done. It also turned out that her older brother was a brilliant financial wizard. Using a combination of assets, a new LLC was formed. Rebecca's semi-retired father became president of the company. Her brother was named acting CFO, and Rebecca was named acting CEO. This was done to keep my name off the books. Nevertheless, I ran things to a large extent. The first thing we did was buy out a small construction company that was poorly managed. Once I took over, things changed quickly. 6 months later, we added another company. By the time we were ready for the finals, we had acquired 5 more companies in different parts of the country. Rebecca and I also became very close and started dating. You may be wondering about June. She healed as much as she could, and thanks to intensive physical therapy, was able to walk with only a slight limp. Because of her injuries, she was medically discharged from the military. The rivalry between June and Becca was never a problem for me. Although she was very grateful to me for saving her life, it was explained to me that I was not her type at all. Her and my type seemed to have a few things in common. If my name had been Samantha instead of Samuel, there's a good chance she would have been much more interested. So now I was sitting across the street from the family business, waiting to get my revenge. Over the past few years, I had become quite wealthy through my investments and the success of our new company. In the past month, Rebecca and I had gotten engaged. I smiled, expecting to burn my former family. They had no idea what was in store for them. They didn't know that a few very specific people were quietly buying up every publicly traded stock available. It wasn't until a week ago that these investors finally crossed the necessary threshold for the plan to succeed. Steph. Steph was in a really bad mood. Not that bad moods are unusual for her. In fact, it was pretty much her modus operandi for the past few years. She wasn't stupid, and she knew she was disliked by almost everyone who worked at this company. To hell with them, she thought. As CFO and daughter of the chairman, she could do whatever she wanted. Besides, if things got really bad, she would just talk to her older brother, who was the CEO. It was a family company. Anyone who had been rude to her would soon find themselves in the unemployment line. However, that wasn't what annoyed her at the moment. She was upset that an unscheduled board meeting had been called. This was highly irregular. Usually, the board of directors only met once a quarter. Most of the meetings were held around the family table. The board only met to reaffirm decisions that had already been made by her parents, her brother, and her. In the end, the 4 of them, and by proxy from her middle brother, controlled 60% of the stock. Each family member owned 12%. A clarification needs to be made here. A few years ago, the family, minus Sam, who left without saying a word, decided that a major expansion was needed. The decision was made to go public and sell shares to get capital for the expansion. The family made sure that each family member kept 12% of the shares, thus retaining control of 60% of the company. Although no formal agreement was made with Sam, his shares were used to vote with the family. No one gave it much thought as he refused any contact with us. He even refused to come to Jimmy and Camila's wedding after Sam divorced her. None of us even knew where he had gone or where he was now. After 10 years of silence from him, we decided that his voices belonged to the family and they could do whatever they wanted. Steph stopped, about to open the door to the office building. Across the street stood a tall, well-built figure. She only had time to catch a glimpse of him, but he seemed somehow familiar. At that moment, a bus passed by, and the figure disappeared. Shrugging, she opened the door and entered the building. Steph was very bored at the meeting. Procedure still had to be followed, even though the council had only met last month and wasn't due to meet for another 2 months. Reading the minutes of the last meeting. Old business repeating what was discussed last month. Update on various departments. No change from last month. New business. Of course there was. What the hell? I said I was making a motion to remove the chairman of the board of directors for gross incompetence and moral misconduct, said the attractive brunette. She must have had some sort of injury because I noticed that she limped slightly when she walked. It was then that Steph noticed that there were far fewer people than there usually were at a board meeting. None of the large shareholders she was used to seeing were present. Instead, there were a few small shareholders present, the brunette who had made the motion and the blonde who hadn't been here before. "I second the motion," shouted the blonde. "What's going on?" thought Steph. Surely they were deluded to think they could sneak something like this through. After all, the family had 60% of the vote. There was simply no way that was going to happen. The stupid woman was just crushed. Everyone but the two stupid women were appalled by the move. The discussion was heated but short. The vote began with the expected result. Miss Caulfield, with 35% of the shares votes for. Obviously, since she made the motion. "Miss Jeffers with 4% of the shares votes for," said the blonde. Again, expected since she seconded the motion. A few more people voted no. Their number amounted to 1% of the shares. So, 40% in favor, 1% against, and the family with 60% still to vote. Of course, Jimmy, me, Mom, and Dad voted no. After all, Dad was the chairman of the board of directors. 49% no to 40% yes. Just as Jimmy got up to cast his vote for Sam to outvote us, the door opened and a tall man I'd noticed across the street walked in. "Samuel Johnson with 12% of the votes for," announced my brother, whom I hadn't seen or heard from in 10 years. That's how quickly our family business was taken from us and given to our brother, which we gave up in favor of our older brother. From that point on, the meeting went on a roll. Instead of Dad, Samuel became chairman of the board of directors. Jimmy was fired and replaced by a blonde. I, too, was fired as CFO and replaced with a brunette. Since neither of us could have envisioned such a scenario, we never worried about contracts. Therefore, there were no severance packages. Golden parachutes? More like lead balls. 10 minutes to pack up and get off the property. That was the good news. All of our houses and cars were company property. It was intended that way for tax purposes. Sam was kind enough to give us a week to pack and move. Well, all of us except Jimmy and Camila. They only had 24 hours. Mom, Dad, Jimmy, Camila, and I just sat stunned while Sam led the meeting. Even though we had just had all the power in the company taken away from us, we were still major shareholders and had every right to attend the meeting. At least we still had our shares and the income from them. In addition, we received a pension through the company. As long as the company existed and made a profit, we should have been fine. True, neither of us had much stock, only about 100,000 each for emergencies. The company paid our mortgages, utilities, cell phones, and cars, so we didn't need much money to live on. Instead, we agreed to funnel most of the profits back into the company and grow it. The plan was to cash out later, and then we could all retire comfortably while we were still young enough to enjoy it. "Okay," said Sam, taking charge of the meeting. "Any other new business?" "Yes, there is one more item of business to discuss." The attractive brunette stated. "SRJ Enterprise has made a buyout offer. I assume you've already had a chance to review the buyout package. The short version is that they will buy all available shares, provided they manage to acquire at least 51% of the company. Johnson Construction, Inc. will then be shut down, and all assets will be absorbed by SRJ Enterprise." "Okay, but what about all the employees? We have a lot of really good people working for us, and I don't want them suddenly out of work and unable to support their families." "Mr. Johnson, all the non-executive employees will just continue to work as before. The only difference they will see is the company name on their checks. Our customers will still work with the people they know. All managers will either be fired or transferred to a similar position at SRJ. I should note that they have asked the chairman, CEO, and CFO to move to the same positions at SRJ. The current chairman of the board and the CEO and CFO will be retiring." "What about those who don't want to sell their shares?" asked Sam, looking at us. "I'm sure there will be those who won't want to sell." "Well, the SRJ rep said that once they get 51%, the purchase price for the remaining shares will be drastically reduced. Apparently, they don't want any more shares, and when word gets out about their plans, the value of the remaining shares will drop dramatically." All those who remain will find that their investment has disappeared. Very well. Is the representative here? Yes, she's waiting in the lobby. She wanted to be available as she hoped to start acting today. Would you like to call security to have her escorted inside? Sam called security, and a few minutes later, an absolute goddess walked through the doors. I wondered why the hell all these attractive women had somehow shown up today and stolen our company from us. And more importantly, what did Sam have to do with this? It was becoming obvious that he was part of the scheme. We hadn't heard a word from him in 10 years, and suddenly he showed up today? And then he decided to kick his family out of the business his father started, and we raised? What the hell was he doing? Why was he doing that? So, like I said, we're offering $120 a share for the first 51%. After that, anyone who wants to sell will be offered $2 per share. Once the controlling interest is obtained, they will not be worth more. Damn. I missed the first part of what she said, and really wish I had heard the rest. Going from $120/share to $2/share was disastrous. Of course, I really didn't want to sell, but not selling would have been a disaster. I quickly stood up and shouted that I wanted to sell. Better get in line early while you can. The redhead smiled, turning to me. Sure, we'd be happy to purchase your shares. You're fourth in line right now, so I'll make you our offer once I finalize the first 3 deals. My stomach clenched when I figured out who the first 3 sellers would be. Being fourth was practically the same as being last. I watched as Sam, then the blonde, then the brunette signed deals to sell their shares. She'd already gotten her 51%. All of our money was tied up in the company. In another 5 years, we planned to sell it and make a profit. We would be multimillionaires. Now we would be lucky to be 11,000-aires. We all had to head home to start packing. Security confiscated our cars and office keys before we were allowed to leave the grounds. We had to make arrangements with security to come back the next day and clean out our offices. The blonde announced that she would revoke all of our access to the company servers and that our logins would be deactivated in the next few minutes. This didn't matter much since our laptops had been confiscated earlier. The blonde also informed us that the next day, the IT staff would come and confiscate our home computers. Furthermore, if evidence was found that we had tried to delete or corrupt any files before they got them, there would be serious charges of corporate espionage, fraud, tampering with evidence, and embezzlement. Jimmy was told that his computer had been confiscated by IT technicians immediately after the vote to remove his father from office. Oh, and we already have a forensic accountant looking into the books. Sam smiled. The following evening, everyone gathered at his parents' house. Jimmy, Camila, and their 3 children arrived with a moving van full of everything they could pack into it in a hurry. Due to the short notice and lack of other options, they were to move in with Jacob and Evelyn until they could arrange another place to live by the end of the week. After the truck was temporarily unloaded in the garage, the family members gathered around the table to plan for the future. Okay, we need to figure out how we're going to respond. We can't just sit back and accept this. We have to fight back and get back what's ours, stated Jacob. Fine, replied Evelyn. But what are we going to do? How do we fight back? Where do we even start? We'll get our lawyers involved and start filing lawsuits. Dad. We don't have any lawyers. The lawyers work for the company and we don't control it anymore. We'd have to hire another lawyer and they cost money. I know we each have accounts where we hide money, but it would be a long legal battle, and right now I need any money I can get to live on until I find another job and get back on my feet, informed Stephanie. Maybe it's time for me to visit my little brother. Jimmy grinned, crunching his knuckles. Camila looked critically at her husband. She'd gotten a very good look at her tall, muscular, and confident ex-husband as he made his way around them in the boardroom. I would strongly advise against it, she declared. It didn't end well for you last time, and he looks a lot tougher and stronger now than he did then. The conversation went on for another half hour, suggestions being made and dropped. Stephanie listened without adding anything new. She did, however, add criticism to every silly idea. She listened to one idea that no one mentioned. It was the one thing that had the slightest chance. She knew it wouldn't fix the situation, but it might make it at least a little easier. Maybe we could just talk to him. The sudden silence was deafening. Everyone in the room suddenly looked in her direction, as if she had suddenly grown a third eye. Maybe if we go over and talk to him, we can apologize for the way we treated him. Maybe if we ask him for mercy, he won't be so harsh. Obviously, he will never take it all back, but maybe if we bow down to him and admit that we were very wrong in our treatment of him, he can ease our pain enough that we can survive and not be completely destroyed. Pandemonium began. You think I'm going to go to him with my tail between my legs and humiliate myself in front of that brat after he abandoned his family? And then he comes back here after 10 years without saying a word and strikes back with his own flesh and blood? Are you out of your mind? I will never dishonor myself by bowing down to that ungrateful bastard, roared Jacob. Really, sis? After the way he treated my wife and me before he ran away, and after what he did today, do you really think I'm going to do anything but find a way to drive him back under that slimy rock he crawled out of? Hell no! Yelled Jimmy. Even Camila screamed that she didn't like groveling before her weak ex-husband. Jimmy is 10 times better than Sam. There's no way I'm going to embarrass myself or my husband by begging that weakling for anything. Honey, her mother said, in the voice of a mother who loves her daughter, but must chide her for her ignorance. I understand what you're thinking, but we must go to war with the man who has encroached on this family's well-being. Now is the time to fight back, not admit defeat. No, we will not talk to our new enemy. We will find a way to attack and take back what is ours. She finished. Dismissing Steph's idea as ridiculous, the discussion returned to possible ways to fight back. Steph remained silent as the conversations continued around her. She had decided for herself what she needed to do. She needed to get off the ship before the train wreck happened. She realized too late what their loving family had done to her older brother. But Sam was gone by then. She never got the chance to tell him she was sorry for her words and actions. She was a self-centered, spoiled brat back then. The epiphany came to her 2 weeks later. The next morning, June Caulfield looked up as the receptionist let Stephanie Johnson into her office. She noticed that Stephanie was wearing a very nice dark blue pencil skirt, fitted jacket, powder blue blouse, black stockings, and 4-inch heeled shoes. All in all, it was a very pleasant but conservative look. Stephanie's blonde hair was professionally styled, and her makeup was tastefully applied. Even though June had heard all the stories about what a cast-iron bitch Steph was, she was still very attractive. Gesturing for her guest to take a seat, June began this rather unexpected meeting. What can I do for you, Miss Johnson? Frankly, I'm quite surprised at your visit here this morning. Yes, I'm sure many people are surprised by my appearance here. In fact, I came today to speak to Samuel, but they told me he wasn't expected. They suggested that you might have a message for me. Perhaps. It depends, of course, on exactly what needs to be conveyed. As you have probably realized from current events, he is not really interested in communicating with your family. In order for us to understand each other, I've heard all the stories about you and your entire family. To be clear, I'm not very fond of all of you either after the way you treated him. So I take it you two are close? Inquired Steph. She could get all the information she wanted about the new players in this game. Perhaps if she could win this woman's favor and show that she truly regretted her past actions, she might be able to convince her brother to help her. Yes, we are close, but maybe not in the way you think. We're not dating. We're just really good friends. In fact, he's more of a brother to me than anything else. Oh, can you tell me how you two met? I could, but I don't think you'd care about that right now. Perhaps some other time. But right now, I'm very busy preparing to take over a new company. So what's your message for Samuel? That was it. She needed to let the attractive woman standing in front of her know that she was truly sorry for her previous behavior. Please tell Sam that I really need to talk to him. I know what my past behavior was, and I sincerely regret it. Unfortunately, I realized it too late, about 2 weeks later. By then, he had already left. I know everyone else is trying to figure out how to combat his actions, but I'm not going to get involved. I just want to be able to look him in the eye and tell him that I am very sorry for the way I acted. Yes, I hope he shows me some mercy, but I'm not even going to suggest that he exclude me from all the punishments that await us. I'm hoping that he will allow me to maintain some sort of relationship with him. I want him to know that I will separate myself from the rest of the family. I want to do this because I realize they were wrong and I want nothing more to do with them. I'm not even going to ask him to trust me. I just want to be able to see and talk to the brother I foolishly threw away. Steph sobbed. June looked at the crying woman and sighed. She'd seen a lot of bullshit from people over the years and had gotten pretty good at recognizing it. She had enough experience from former lovers and employees she'd had to fire to know the difference between crocodile tears and real tears of grief and loss. She could easily see that Steph was sincere. Okay, listen, Sam's going out of town for a few days. He won't be back until Monday. I'll give him a message and see if I can arrange for him to make time for you. Thanks. I appreciate it. Don't worry about it. I'll tell you what. How about we get together tonight for drinks and dinner? I don't know anyone here, and I'd like to talk to you more and find out exactly what you want out of it. To say that Stephanie was taken aback by such a suggestion is to say nothing. June seemed like a very attractive woman, and Steph liked women in general. Yes, Samuel's younger sister was a lesbian, though she never made the rest of her family aware of it. She went to parties and events with different guys, so she wouldn't give herself away. But whenever she was out of town, she would look for another woman to enjoy. It would also give her a chance to learn more about this woman and her relationship with her brother. She might also learn more about the blonde and the redhead who had helped ambush her and her family. Not that she was going to use that information to help the others in their fight. On the contrary, she needed that information so she could use it to forge a new relationship with Samuel. It would be useful if she could get some allies on her side. So tell me more about what you're looking for here, declared June a few hours later at the bar where she and Stephanie had met. I've pretty much told you everything. All I really want is a new and better relationship with Sam. I know I screwed up, and I accept that. Believe me now, I'll gladly accept any mercy he decides to show me, but even if he decides to throw me out in the cold, I still want to show him that I've changed and I want to be a better sister to him. How do I know you're not just saying that to get information to use against him? Honestly, you don't. You have no reason to trust me. Neither does Sam. I'm curious about what's happened to him in the last 10 years. I can see that he's important to you and that you have a serious relationship with him. To be completely honest, I really want to know more about you and the other two women. I want this because if I can get my brother back, I think I need to know the people who are important to him. If they are important to my brother, they should be important to me. You said you're like a sister to him. That means I should be like a sister to you. After all, if you're his sister, then you're my sister too. Maybe you can teach me how to be a better sister to Sam than I have been in the past. That's an interesting suggestion. It sounds plausible, though. So, you're obviously an attractive woman and seem to be pretty close to Sam. Why aren't you two dating? Asked Steph. Something about that question made her uneasy. June laughed. Okay. There are actually two reasons. I can tell you this because there's really nothing about it that you can use against us. The first reason is that Sam is already in a relationship with another man. In fact, they're engaged. The second reason is that, how should I put this? Let's just say you're a much better match for me than Sam. June smirked. That threw Stephanie into confusion. Are you saying you're a lesbian? 100% Rainbow Warrior? So how did you two meet? I'd really like to know. We met in the army. He pulled me out of a wrecked car and saved my life. He was wounded too, but not as badly. That's how I hurt my leg, by the way. My family was very grateful to him, and we kind of adopted him when we heard his story. Oh, wow. We didn't even know he was military. He just left without saying a word. Yesterday was the first time we heard about him. Yeah, I know. He did it on purpose. I understand. We really didn't treat him very well. So, You mentioned that he's engaged? Yes. As soon as he's done here, they're getting married. Can you tell me who she is? Is it that blonde girl? No. She's actually engaged to my older brother. No. Sam is engaged to my sister. I think it was love at first sight for both of them when Sam woke up in the hospital in Germany. I really wish I had known he was hurt. I would have been there for him. Yeah, but Becca really threw herself into nursing him back to health. Believe me, she's just a mama bear when it comes to protecting him. Trust me, you don't want her to think you want to hurt him. She's a tough lawyer, and I've seen the wreckage she leaves behind when she really wants to destroy her opponent in court. That is, if you actually make it to trial. She can just tear you apart with her bare hands. I've seen her do it several times. Yeah, sounds like I really need to meet her and make sure I don't get into a bad situation. Actually, you've already met her, and sweet cheeks, you're already on her bad side. It's the redhead. Yep, she hates each and every one of you. She's the one you need to defeat. Hungry, they went to the restaurant next door. The conversation continued, both women learning more and more about each other. June was very careful what she said, as she wasn't going to give away any information about Sam's plans. Steph asked about SRJ Enterprise, but June refused to answer questions about her. The meal was finished, and both women were finishing their wine. Okay, June, you said I need to win over your sister Rebecca to have any chance of a relationship with Sam, stated Stephanie. She had been working on that question for the last half of dinner. Yes, she's his gatekeeper, replied June. Well, I have a foolproof plan for that one. Tell me about it. June smiled. How are you going to turn my barracuda demon sister from the very depths of hell into the loving sister you claim to be? Simple. First, I'm going to conquer you, and then you're going to conquer your sister for me. Interesting concept. June smirked. And how do you propose to win me over? Oh, I think it's going to be pretty easy. It's just that my plan is to take you to my house. After that, you'll call in sick tomorrow, and we'll be together all weekend. I have every confidence that when you finally get to work Monday morning, you'll be excitedly telling your sister what an amazing woman I am now, and that you'll be thrilled that she'll welcome your new girlfriend with open arms. I see. So what's to stop me from rejecting your advances and making me believe you're serious about being my girlfriend? Actually, two things. One, you've already told me that I'm your type, and I believe you really like me. Second, I just told you my biggest secret. None of my family or friends know that I'm a lesbian. No one even realizes it. This is going to reveal my secret to the whole world. I've never done this for anyone before. The fact that I'm willing to bare my true self and come out of the closet should convince you that I'm totally serious. If you still have any doubts about that after this weekend, just watch my parents and Jimmy disown me when it's revealed. I've already told you that I will disown them. That will only push the issue and prove my intentions. Damn it, sis. What the hell happened to you? You look like shit, exclaimed Rebecca when June was finally able to make it into the office Monday morning. Severe sleep deprivation brought on by 3 full days of non-stop intercourse. If you think I don't look good, you should look at my new girlfriend, replied June. Wow. Okay, who is this new girlfriend and how did this happen so fast? Asked Rebecca. Tell you what, let me get some caffeine, and then I need to meet with you and Sam for a bit. I have news for both of you. How about 20 minutes in Sam's office? Sure. Go get some coffee. You look like you need it. So, June, what's this I hear about a new girl? Asked Sam as a disheveled June walked into his office. Well, on Thursday, while you two were out of town, I had an unexpected visitor. That turned into an even more unexpected dinner, and then a full weekend. Now it seems I've acquired an even more shocking girlfriend. Okay, so who is it? Asked Becca anxiously. June let the tension linger for a moment, glancing over at her sister and future brother-in-law. Her name is Stephanie Johnson. She watched the two faces in front of her change from happy and smiling to complete shock. It was several minutes before either of them could utter the words. My bitch sister? Well, sort of. but I found out some interesting information about her and the rest of your family. Before you get turned on, I did a little investigating from the moment she left my office until I met her tonight. It seems she came to her senses right after you left. In fact, she's very sorry for the way she treated you before. Of course you don't take her word for it, even though she had sleep with you all weekend. Of course I don't. And my name is June, not Shirley. June giggled, and Sam and Rebecca rolled their eyes at such a bad joke. Seriously, I made some inquiries. Several longtime employees remarked on how she acted for a while right after you left. She seemed very sad and depressed for several months and mentioned that she missed you a lot. Could it have just been the people loyal to her feeding you all sorts of nonsense to help her? I doubt it. Do you remember Kate? Even she told me about it. Sam did remember the longtime accounts receivable secretary. He knew that he and Steph really hated each other. If Kate had said that, then it was true. Okay, but I'm pretty sure Steph isn't gay. Actually, she is. She's 100% lesbian. Trust me, she was very well versed in the intricacies of sapphic love. That's one of the things that helped convince me. She comes out of the closet for the opportunity to talk to you and try to build a better relationship. She's giving up the rest of her family completely. That sounds a little self-serving to me. I think she sees what's in store for her and is trying to protect herself. I don't doubt that's partly the case, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. I suggest hiring her as my assistant so we can keep an eye on her. It would also help to find out how sincere she is. Worst case scenario, we can always use her to get information on everyone else, suggested June. Why not? Agreed Sam. We'll install tracking software on her computers, tablets, and phones to see if she'll try to set us up. Schedule a meeting with the three of us for this afternoon. We'll have your brother install the software and offer her a job after the meeting if all goes well. Just make sure you think with your highly intelligent brain. Rebecca teased her sister as they finished the meeting. Sam sat at his desk in shock as he listened to his sister's afternoon conversation. He was surprised at the vehemence with which she talked about their parents, their brother, and especially Camille. She talked about how she had to behave for the past 10 years because she had no other options and needed to stay on the family's good side. She also provided a lot of information about how the family ran the company, the accounts and plans to take back control. When asked about the seemingly sudden change in her personal life, she spoke candidly about her past. She confirmed that she now comes completely out of the closet and proudly stated that she had no qualms about messing things up with their very bigoted family. I've been miserable for the last 10 years. I'm sorry I only realized it after you left, but by then it was too late. Even if you reject me now, I'm just happy that I have a chance to finally apologize to you for my past behavior, concluded Steph. Good. I accept your apology. They seem sincere, and I'm even willing to try to see if we can work out some sort of relationship. Unfortunately, there remains the issue of trust. Given your past behavior towards me and your relationship with the rest of your family, I simply don't trust you. You have every reason to deceive us, after all. I have pretty much taken everything from you. However, my future daughter-in-law seems to think you deserve a chance. Keep in mind that we will be watching you very closely, and any misstep you make will have dire consequences. Don't screw up. Oh, what's SRJ Enterprise? Asked Steph. I've never heard of it before. SRJ is Samuel, Rebecca, and June. We own the company, so it doesn't matter how much we offer for our shares, we still pay ourselves with our own money. Should have known better. 6 months later, Stephanie never moved out of her house. Instead, June moved in and let her friend live with her. Sam and Becca couldn't stop marveling at how well their relationship was working out. Stephanie seemed to really like June, and she was really working on developing their relationship. Stephanie accepted a position as June's assistant and seemed to enjoy working under her, in every sense, although Steph sometimes found herself on top during work hours. Sam opened up to her, and Steph and Sam began to relate to each other better. It also helps that Steph and Sam are dating sisters and often socialize with their partners. Yes, she was disowned by her parents and older brother when she happily told them she was gay and living with her girlfriend. She was pleased to hear her mother scream when she informed them exactly who her girlfriend was. All Jimmy and Camila had to do was watch their former home pass into the hands of Dave and his fiancée. Feeling a little sorry for Jimmy and Camila's children, they were innocent victims, Sam backed off on the revenge part he had planned for his brother and ex-wife. Instead of eternal unemployment and sending them to an almshouse, Sam offered them jobs. Of course, it took a few months in finding themselves on the verge of being evicted from the cheap apartment they were renting before they both finally humbled their pride and accepted. Of course, the job they were offered was not what they had hoped for. Sam, being quite popular in the community, had tacitly made it clear that he would have no dealings with anyone who hired someone from his former family. As for Jacob and Evelyn, they tried to file a lawsuit against Sam to force him to leave and return the company to them. Truth be told, the case was pretty weak, but they managed to find a law firm desperate for cases to take on the challenge. This lasted about 30 seconds of the first hearing. Jacob and Evelyn's two attorneys watched as the striking red-headed girl walked into the courtroom to the defendant's table, looked at each other, then gathered their briefcases and informed their clients that they were dropping the case and practically jogged out of the room. Later, when Jacob and his wife burst into the law office to demand what the hell had happened, both attorneys informed them of the disaster in progress. "Don't you know who their lawyer is?" one of the partners asked. One of the partners asked. One of the partners asked. "Of course we do," demanded Jacob. "It's the bitch who represents the corporation that bought us out. She is also apparently the fiancée of our disinherited son." "So you really don't know," stated the second partner, shaking his head. "This is Rebecca Caulfield. To be perfectly honest, your case is very weak. You had only a slim chance of winning anyway. We were hoping that they would decide that fighting in court would cost too much and offer a settlement. Worst case scenario, their lawyers would just work on the merits of the case and maybe get it dismissed. Rebecca is a different matter, especially since you just mentioned that she is engaged to your son, whom you don't seem to like. That makes the matter personal for her. She won't be content to just win the case. She will chew you up, spit you out, and then completely humiliate and destroy you. After that, she will turn her attention to whoever is representing your interests. We may need the work, but we're not desperate enough to go completely bankrupt by taking on an unwinnable case against the most ruthless barracuda on the planet. When the funds ran out and there were no other options, the couple was left with no other choice but to move into a small one-bedroom apartment they could afford on welfare. Evelyn spends her days as an unpaid nanny for Jimmy and Camila's children as her oldest son and daughter-in-law work. Jacob spends his days in misery, sitting on the couch and lamenting the way his life has turned out. The elderly spouses do not socialize with their younger son or daughter. They rarely see their eldest son because of his work. "Pardon me, Mr. Johnson," the store cashier said softly as she entered Sam's office. "Yes, Camila. What can I do for you?" he replied, smiling at his ex-wife and now daughter-in-law. "Well, I was wondering if you had the opportunity to move Jimmy somewhere closer to home. Because he's been working out of state for the past few months, we only see each other one day a week. But even then, he's usually too tired to do anything." "I'm sorry, Camila, but all the rough labor positions closer to home are taken. To move Jimmy closer, I'd have to move another rough laborer to take his place. I would just replace your hardship with someone else's. It wouldn't be fair to the other man and his family." The once attractive blonde began to sob. "Please, Mr. Johnson. I know you despise us and punish us for what we have done, but I am desperate. I haven't made love to my husband in months. I will do anything you ask. Please, 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 please let me see my husband," she pleaded. "Anything?" came a familiar female voice over the speakerphone. $1,000 says she didn't quite mean it." Another female voice added. "From what she told me when I met with the family to come out of the closet, I'm not buying what she's selling," said a third woman. Yes, Sam had summoned his fiancée, future sister-in-law, and sister-in-law as soon as the secretary informed him that Camila wished to speak to him. He was sure that was what the conversation would be about, and he wanted those closest to him to listen and enjoy it. "Well, Camila, No one seems to be buying it. Perhaps you should be more specific about what exactly you want to do. Frankly, I don't much like having that scumbag you call a husband any closer to me than absolutely necessary. If we could find a job in Siberia, that's where I'd send him. Why in heaven's name would I even consider moving him any closer? At least now he can come home every weekend. But that's an 8-hour drive. He gets home late Friday night, rests on Saturday, and then leaves again on Sunday morning. Considering he's just a handyman and makes barely more than minimum wage, he's so exhausted by the time he gets home that he just sleeps all day. Well, Camila, I'm not sure that's my problem. If things aren't working out between the two of you, you can quit and find another job. You know that's not an option. You know we've already tried that. We can't afford to pack up and move to another place, and no one else will hire us after what happened became known. I realize you hate us and what we did, but can't you show at least a modicum of compassion? Again, why would I? You two have never had any compassion for me. In fact, you've plastered it all over my face. The two of you have never shown the slightest bit of regret for what you did to me. All the regret you feel now is due to the fact that I took revenge on you. It's not because of what you did to me. Seeing that no words could change her ex-husband's mind, Camila realized there was only one thing left for her to do. I'll do anything. Maybe, she thought, she could get her ex-husband back and throw this overripe bitch out on the street. Okay, pronounced Becca over the speaker. How about this? Sam, you and I have been discussing the idea of a threesome of us with another woman. Camila's horror at the thought only increased when June said, Oh yes, Steph and I were discussing the possibility of hooking up with another woman too. Jimmy won't be back this weekend, so maybe you guys can spend time with her on Saturday, and we'll take her on Sunday. Next chapter. You goddamn bastard, screamed Camila, bursting into Sam's office on Thursday afternoon. She had just been served with divorce papers. Attached to the divorce papers, for adultery by the way, were several pictures of Camila during the affair. You goddamn son of a bitch! He goddamn kicks me out of my house and says I'm a wrong mother, continued Camila's screaming. Her tirade continued for another 10 minutes and drew a sizable crowd. Rebecca, June, and Stephanie were obviously among them. All this time, Sam just sat silently with a smile on his face. He remained silent until Camila finally calmed down and started sobbing. Becca? As counsel for the company, what are my options in dealing with the grave accusations that one of our cashiers has made against us? Well, Mr. Johnson, as far as the evidence I have seen here, she has no evidence that you, I, or any other employee of the firm has anything to do with her promiscuous behavior. My opinion on this matter is that she has been caught in a very compromising position, and she is grasping at straws to find some way to pay off that will save her reputation and secure her financial position. My advice is to fire her for creating a hostile work environment. Lord knows our security cameras have captured enough of her false accusations to warrant it. Sam sighed. Very good. Although she hurt me when she left me for my brother, I was really hoping that helping them and hiring them when no one else would could somehow heal the rift in our family. In the end, it worked when we hired Stephanie. So be it. Camila, I have no choice but to let you go. Please go to Human Resources. They will explain your rights and options. Your final check will be delivered to you before you leave. But, I have nowhere to go. Jimmy kicked me out and filed a restraining order. Without this job, I can't even get another apartment or hotel room for the night. She whimpered. Camila, I suggest you consider all your options. Are you sure you don't know of another position for which you would be a good fit? Maybe a position that also includes room and board? June asked with a sly smile. A look of horror appeared on Camila's face as she suddenly realized the purpose of having this conversation on Monday morning. Sam, Rebecca, June, and Stephanie had planned this whole thing from the beginning. Gave them low-paying jobs to take away their options. Sent Jimmy out of state to keep them apart. Wore Jimmy out to the limit so that he would be too exhausted. Drove a wedge between them to diminish their affection for each other. drive them to the point of desperation so that she would be willing to accept their most bizarre proposals. And finally, providing her husband with evidence of her disgusting promiscuous behavior. All of this led to her husband filing for divorce and kicking her out of the house with nowhere to go. Now no one would ever hire her for a job. She had just been fired from a simple job. Sure, she could move to the other side of the country, but what kind of life would that be? She wouldn't have any references to get any kind of decent job. How would she be able to explain the huge gap in her work experience? The best she could hope for was a minimum wage job that probably wouldn't even support her, and the inability to see her children again. The next option was to live on the streets and beg for spare change to survive. She would at least see her children once in a while, even if it was supervised. Was she punished enough? Many would say no. The middle child, the forgotten one, the other child, the one who has to take care of herself, the one who becomes independent, the one who develops a desire to take revenge on those who have wronged him and becomes utterly ruthless. The end. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. So subscribe to my channel and watch the next video.